And it's nice to have you here in person versus always in Washington. Welcome to CNN.
Great to see you.
You know, we have never quite seen a debt fight to raise the ceiling, and it's been raised many, many times in the past 60 years ago than we have recently. Do you think we would be in the same shape, though, as we are now with regard to markets and this S&P downgrade? Because of what we've seen Friday night, would we be in a different spot?
No, I think the same thing would have occurred if we had not had this fight and we just went ahead and had a clean increase in the debt ceiling of the $2.4 trillion that the president really originally 6 months ago asked for, because Standard & Poor's had already said, look, you've got problems, $14.3 trillion worth of debt. You've had 3 straight budgets of $1.5 trillion worth of deficits. You cannot sustain this. You've got 60 trillion unfunded liabilities in the Medicare and Social Security programs. So you've got to do something. So I think that even though we came together and did the Budget Reduction Act, and they said it was insufficient, it didn't reach the $4 trillion threshold. Mm-hmm. I think more importantly, they were downgrading us because, well, I mean, they said it in the report, they didn't have confidence that Washington get its job done, could come together in a compromising way and get the job done.
You know, the president spoke today, I'm sure you saw, from the state dining room. I want to play just a little bit of that sound as he led with the downgrading, the S&P downgrade off the top. Let's listen. We'll talk on the other side.
It's not a lack of plans or policies that's the problem here. It's a lack of political will in Washington. It's the insistence on drawing lines in the sand, a refusal to put what's best for the country ahead of self-interest or party or ideology. And that's what we need to change.
The ideologies, the drawing the lines in the sand, you work up there. You feel that?
Well, is he talking about the speck in my eye or the plank in his, in ideology and drawing lines in the sand? I mean, the president had an opportunity to not raise taxes at a time when unemployment rate's 9.2%, 15 million or so out of work, 44% of them more than 6 months.
But didn't Congress also have a chance to do that as well?
Well, we did. I mean, you know, there was an impasse. We sincerely believe that we don't tax too little in Washington. We spend too much. And the president felt a little bit different about that, so we did reach an impasse.
A lot of people talk about how it was the Tea Party that held these negotiations hostage, and it was the issue with the revenue increases or the tax increases that was part of the grand bargain when he had been talking to Mr. Boehner, and also part of the Gang of Six solution, also with the Bowles-Simpson. It was all part of that. And therefore, they could get that larger number in cuts.
Right.
Why not? Would you at all going forward, as they name the members of the super committee, be willing to compromise on that?
Well, Speaker Boehner told the Republican conference that the deal, he said there was no deal until it was a deal. But what they were talking about was $800 billion worth of revenue enhancement, not tax increases, but tax code.
Rewriting the tax code.
Absolutely, rewriting and cutting out a lot of these loopholes and the big oil, ethanol, $6 billion here. But then the president came back, maybe right after the Gang of Six issued their report, and said, now we need another $400 billion. And that's when that broke apart. So who knows? I wasn't in the room. You weren't in the room. But I think it's time. I honestly, Brooke, I think we ought to go back. I think the president...
Would you go back early?
Absolutely.
You would?
We have 2 to 3 weeks worth of work that we could do this August. We could open up the Marcellus Shale. We could drill off the coast. We could solve our energy problem.
What about this number?
Repeal Dodd-Frank, I think, would be a big help.
What about this number, $1.2 trillion? That's essentially what the super committee, the bipartisan, the 12 members of Congress, they'll all be seated to this committee, and they're supposed to be cutting $1.2 trillion. Do you think that should be the starting point and not the end game?
I think it should be the starting point and not the end game, because, you know what, I was for cut, cap, and balance. And, you know, I was of the 66 members who voted against this Budget Reduction Act of 2011 because it didn't go far enough. The 1.2 or 1.5 trillion added to the 900 billion comes far short of the $4 trillion that the Standard & Poor's rating agency asked for, and that is in cut, cap, and balance. That kind of cut, cutting the percentage of spending per GDP and getting that balanced budget amendment. We desperately need that. And you can't say that it was the Tea Party that held us hostage. We held ourselves hostage.
I want to yield to my colleague Aaron Burnett, who has a question. Aaron, to you.
I just want to throw in one question, Brooke, as you're talking about what really happened here with the Tea Party. Representative Gingrey, I'm curious in terms of if we're really going to tackle issues in this country in terms of spending. Obviously, entitlements are 3/4 of our future obligations, and we all know it, but going to your constituents and telling them you're not going to be able to retire for up to 5 years, you have to work 5 more years longer than you thought you would, the contributions the government's going to make to your Medicare are going to go down, your price indexing are going to change. Are you supportive of all of the cuts that we're going to have to make and entitlements to really deal with this problem, or are you in the camp where you're going to keep them off the table?
Aaron, we absolutely have to address that, and that's part of the reason we got downgraded. We have something like $62 trillion worth of unfunded liability going forward to 2050 in the Medicare and Social Security programs. Paul Ryan was criticized, but he had the courage to at least put a budget out there, and we voted on it in the House. We passed it to look at the Medicare program and make some changes that would save it for our children and our grandchildren, and to protect it for those who are currently on it, who will be in the next 10 years. So we protect Medicare as we know it, but we save it for the future. That's the bold kind of steps that we need to take on both sides of the aisle, and we need to do the same thing, quite honestly, with Social Security. But members, of course, are this third rail of politics. You always worry about the next election, but we really should be, I know it's trite to say, but concerned about the next generation.
Aaron, thank you. I do just want to end with this. We conducted a poll, CNN opinion research poll, and here's what we asked. Do you think the bill treats all Americans fairly, or do you think it benefits the rich at the expense of the poor and the middle class? So the results you see there on the screen, 62% of Americans say it benefits the rich. Where do you fall? Do you fall in the 62%?
No, I don't fall in the 62%. I truly believe that the job creators, those people making $200,000 a year, are the small businessmen and women that create the jobs and ultimately will help the middle class and the poor. A rising tide lifts all boats, and you have to start with job creation. We'll never get there until we replace all these jobs that have been lost.
Well, 2 items from you here today. You're willing to go back to work early, and you think that $1.2 trillion should be the starting point. Congressman Gingrey, good to have you here.
Brooke, thank you so much,
and
great to see you.
And still to come, take a look at some of these pictures here we've been watching out of